you know, a lot of people ask me about that and say, what's the secret of Mrs. Brown? And I don't know if there is any secret about Mrs. Brown. And I don't, she's a bitch. Yeah, and you know, she loves her kids, and I also think that she's at an age where she doesn't care what she says.
For over a decade, fans have tuned in for the mayhem and the mad matriarch at the heart of BBC's long-running sitcom, Mrs. Brown's Boys. But for all the laughs on screen, a different story was unfolding behind the cameras. And now, recent reports reveal actors quitting over pay gaps and other shocking revelations about the backstage politics that fans never saw. So, what really happened behind the scenes? Why did they leave the sitcom? Join us as we explore the real reasons why these actors left Mrs. Brown's Boys. The comedy critics hate, but viewers can't get enough of. About 4 years ago, something very surprising happened in the world of comedy, something no critic expected. The BBC sitcom Mrs. Brown's Boys was crowned the best British sitcom of the 21st century in a public poll. That might sound normal, but here's the twist. Critics saw it in a negative light. They had called it infantile, talent deficient,
Oh, yeah, of course. Ginger.
and entirely unfunny. Another reviewer even said it was lazy, end of pure trash, rooted in the 1970s. Yet while critics rolled their eyes, millions of viewers were voting with their hearts. This isn't the first time critics and audiences have completely disagreed. Shows like The Big Bang Theory, Citizen Khan, and My Family all faced similar battles. But when it comes to Brendan O'Carroll's Mrs. Brown's Boys, the gap is like a giant canyon. No matter how harsh the reviews get, the show continues to thrive, with its Christmas specials pulling in millions of loyal viewers every year. At the heart of it all is Agnes Brown, the foul-mouthed Irish mammy played by Brendan O'Carroll himself. The character is inspired by his own mother, who raised 11 children on very little money. The show takes place in the Brown family home, and one of its trademarks is breaking the fourth wall. Agnes often speaks straight to the camera, and instead of editing out mistakes, the show leaves in line flubbing, broken props, and retakes, all for laughs. What really keeps the fans laughing, though, are the crude jokes and silly setups. In the very first episode, for example, 92-year-old Grandad Brown falls ill, and a doctor says he needs a rectal reading. "Will you help, Mrs. Brown?" he asks. Agnes cheerfully replies, "With feckin' pleasure," before pulling on a rubber glove. The audience howled. It was silly, bold, and a bit outrageous, basically a pantomime for grown-ups. And it makes sense, since the show actually began on stage before making its way to TV. Brendan O'Carroll's path to success was anything but ordinary. He left school at just 11 and worked all kinds of jobs, waiter, milkman, DJ, before trying stand-up comedy. He first created Mrs. Brown for a radio soap opera, and when the actress who was supposed to play her got sick, O'Carroll stepped in. That happy accident turned into his big break. But life wasn't all laughs. At one point, O'Carroll lost millions on a self-funded film called Sparrow's Trap, which never got released. To recover, he returned to Mrs. Brown, this time as a stage show. One night, BBC producer Stephen McCrum happened to be in the audience. He later recalled how even though he wasn't religious, the energy in the theater that night almost made him believe in miracles. Old women and teenagers alike were roaring with laughter, and McCrum knew he had stumbled upon something special. Not everyone agreed, of course. When Mrs. Brown's Boys finally premiered on BBC One in 2011, critics predicted it wouldn't even last a season, but audiences proved them wrong. By the third episode, 2.9 million viewers were tuning in. That Christmas, 6.6 million people watched the special. From there, the numbers just kept climbing. The strange thing is, the more critics attack the show, the more successful it seems to get. The Guardian called it a predictable, vulgar vehicle for O'Carroll. Vice wrote that it was,
My God! Did they get a description?
embarrassing to see adults behave like this. Some even called it the worst comedy ever made. But fans had a very different opinion. Mrs. Brown's Boys the movie shot to the top of the UK box office. The live world tour broke records. Even Mrs. Brown's Boys the musical filled arenas across Britain. So, while critics keep shaking their heads, audiences keep laughing and buying tickets. It seems that no matter how much it's mocked, Mrs. Brown's Boys has found a magic formula that critics can't break. Brendan O'Carroll and his body alter ego Agnes Brown continue to prove one thing. Sometimes the people know best, even if the reviewers don't agree. But what happens when the laughter on screen is touched by change behind the scenes? The curtains close on Rory Brown. Beginning with Rory Cowan, the beloved actor who played the flamboyant and witty hairdresser Rory Brown on the hit BBC sitcom. Roy quietly stepped away from the show in 2017, bringing an end to his 6-year run as one of television's most memorable comedic characters. Behind the laughter and chaotic antics that fans adored on screen, Rory had been wrestling with his own feelings of dissatisfaction and fatigue, which ultimately led to his decision to leave. In an interview with the Irish Daily Mail, Rory admitted that his happiness had been waning for nearly 2 years before his departure. "I hadn't been happy working for the Mrs. Brown's Boys company for the last 18 months to 2 years. I feel that 26 years is enough, so I decided it was time to go." Despite his inner turmoil, Rory had initially considered quitting earlier, but Brendan O'Carroll, the creator of the show and the actor behind the iconic matriarch herself,
The Queen thing gave me an idea.
Queen thing?
Look, never mind, Father. Father, what you need to do is get a member of the community.
persuaded him to stay a little longer. Rory explained that he handed in his notice to O'Carroll on June 16, 2017, intending to leave immediately. However, O'Carroll asked him to continue until the end of the London O2 gigs, a request Rory agreed to. The actor described his final moments on set as understated, packing up his belongings in a simple plastic bag and quietly leaving the venue. Despite the abrupt exit, Rory emphasized that there were no hard feelings between him and O'Carroll, whom he had known for more than 2 decades. O'Carroll also paid tribute to Rory after his exit, likening it to a sports legend leaving their team. "To all of us, it feels like Ronaldo leaving Manchester United. But Ronaldo went on to amazing success, which I know Rory will too," he stated. He also highlighted Cowan's immense contribution to the show, both on screen and behind the scenes, describing him as a driving force in the success of Mrs. Brown's Boys' legacy. Rory's departure marked the end of his appearances on stage and screen, including the 2017 Christmas special. His character was subsequently recast, with Damien McKiernan taking over for the festive episodes. On RTE Radio 1's Ray D'Arcy show, Rory admitted he had no interest in following his replacement's performances.
A Facebook Live, they recorded it and broadcast it, and there was over 100,000 views on it that day, which was...
He expressed how the repetitive nature of the BBC format had made the work feel stale, leaving him bored and unmotivated. Despite leaving the limelight, Cowan has continued to maintain his career in entertainment, appearing in other projects such as Tipping Point. Reflecting on his time with Mrs. Brown's Boys, it's clear that his exit was not a matter of conflict, but rather a pursuit of new challenges and creative fulfillment. After years of contributing to one of Ireland's most popular sitcoms, Rory Cowan's departure represents both the closing of a chapter and the promise of new beginnings. However, Roy's unhappiness was the beginning of the problems. What other things were happening behind the scenes of this favorite sitcom? Backstage battles behind the laughs. Recently, reports have emerged that 2 actors, Damien McKiernan and Gary Hollywood, decided to quit the show amid disputes over pay and working conditions, casting a shadow over the production. The controversy centers around a long-standing pay gap between the main cast and Brendan O'Carroll's family, who make up a significant portion of the actors. McKiernan and Hollywood, who play the couple Dino and Rory, reportedly discovered they earned considerably less than other cast members, many of whom are O'Carroll's relatives. The revelation left the actors frustrated and disheartened, as they realized their contributions were not being valued equally. An insider described the working environment as very upstairs, downstairs, with a clear divide between the family members and the other actors. The family are all directors of the Mrs. Brown's Boys production company and are always looked after, the source revealed. the BBC lets Brendan do whatever he wants. The insider added that this hierarchical setup has fostered tension, resentment, and a sense of unfairness among cast members who are not related to O'Carroll. The pay dispute was only part of the issue. Both Damien and Gary were reportedly excluded from the 2020 Christmas specials.
You're right, Mummy.
I know. First, we need a story.
While Gary would appear in only one of the episodes, Damien was simply informed that his character would be written out entirely. The actors were reportedly stunned and saddened by this decision, feeling both confused and undervalued. For Damien and Gary, the situation became untenable. Gary, seeing his limited role in the upcoming specials, decided to step away from the show. Damien, faced with being written out, followed suit. The departures mark a significant shakeup for a series that has been a staple of BBC comedy for years. However, their decision to leave the show and expose the bias did not even scratch the surface of what was happening. What else was discovered? The dynamics behind the curtain. Brendan O'Carroll himself has remained tight-lipped about salaries, but his success is well documented. His net worth was last estimated in 2013 at nearly €10 million. Reports later revealed that profits from his entertainment company, BOCPIX Ltd, nearly doubled to €584,311,000 in 2018. Brendan and his wife, Jennifer Gibney, earned close to €2 million in dividends from the company over 2017 and 2018. Much of his income also comes from touring. The origins of Mrs. Brown's Boys trace back to a short 1992 radio play written by O'Carroll. He later published 4 books, one of which was adapted into a 1999 movie starring Angelica Houston. Determined to bring his vision to life on stage, he founded a theater company, initially called Mrs. Brown's Boys, recruiting family and friends to perform. O'Carroll famously donned drag to play Agnes Brown.
Bluebell Girls Choir. Hello, boys.
Hey, Ma. Oh, it's freezing out.
I know, love. Want a cup of tea?
After the actress meant to play her did not show up one night. This stage production eventually became the beloved sitcom that debuted on television in 2011, leading to more stage shows and a D-movie film adaptation. Despite its success, the show's backstage life is a far cry from the on-screen hilarity. O'Carroll's family, including his wife Jennifer, his sister Eilish, his son Danny, and his daughter Fiona, have all appeared on the series, cementing a family-dominated cast. From the outside, Mrs. Brown's Boys always seemed like one big, joyful family. The cast laughed through bloopers, teased each other in interviews, and shared stories that made fans feel like they were part of something warm and chaotic. But behind the cameras, a very different story unfolded, a tale shaped as much by bloodlines as by talent. While this familial approach added charm to the series and became part of its identity, it also created a rigid inner circle, a hierarchy that wasn't always obvious to outsiders. For some longtime cast members, the family first system gradually revealed its downsides. Actors who had been with the show from its earliest stage days began noticing patterns: less pay, fewer lines, and reduced visibility on screen compared to the O'Carrolls. Loyalty and talent mattered less than proximity to Brendan. The former cast member described it as a velvet rope system. Those inside the circle participated in creative meetings, influenced their character arcs, and enjoyed prominent screen time. Those outside waited and watched. The imbalance grew clearer over time.
Fly with me, fly with me, fly with me. Fly, fly, come on, woo, fly, fly, fly. Shut!
The O'Carroll family dominated specials and central plotlines, while other actors' roles shrank or disappeared entirely. The issue wasn't overt hostility or malice, but a quiet, structural inequality that built tension among the cast. Whispered frustrations circulated backstage, and an unofficial nickname emerged: the Inner Club. It wasn't formal, but it described a small, trusted group woven into the production through family ties, marriage, or decades of loyalty. Did Branson ever acknowledge this growing divide? A different perspective. After much debate, Brendan eventually acknowledged this dynamic, framing it as trust rather than favoritism. He spoke proudly of working with people who had been by his side from the very beginning, praising their reliability and commitment. Yet, in an industry where recognition and opportunity are everything, even the appearance of nepotism can create deep divides. The Inner Club wasn't just about keeping family close. It shaped the show's creative and social environment. Decisions on who appeared in specials, whose lines mattered, and whose storylines were prioritized often reflected membership in this circle. Actors outside the group were left on the margins, their contributions less visible, and their concerns frequently unaddressed. The consequences were tangible. As roles diminished and tensions mounted, some actors quietly left the show. The departures of Dino and Rory made headlines, but for many viewers, the underlying reason remained unseen. Fans, drawn to the sitcom's themes of love, togetherness, and support,
Oh, I see.
So, Maria,
were left puzzled when familiar faces vanished. The show's marketed warmth clashed with the reality of a production where being inside or outside the trusted circle often determined job security and creative influence. Longtime members who weren't part of the O'Carroll family were sometimes pushed aside, while those within the circle thrived. But there was more to be uncovered. The Paradise Papers leak of 2017 sent shockwaves worldwide, revealing hidden offshore accounts and tax arrangements among some of the wealthiest individuals. For Mrs. Brown's Boys, the fallout was particularly striking. 3 cast members, Fiona O'Carroll, Martin Delaney, and Patrick Houlihan, were implicated. Fiona, Brendan O'Carroll's daughter, played Maria Brown. Her then-husband, Martin, portrayed Trevor, while Patrick, a long-standing member, brought life to Dermot. Suddenly, these beloved faces were linked to offshore accounts and intricate financial maneuvers rather than punchlines. According to reports, the trio had allegedly funneled over €2 million of their earnings into offshore entities in Mauritius. These funds were then returned as loans, a legal accounting technique often used to minimize tax liability. Technically, nothing they did broke the law, but the optics were jarring. Fans had long embraced the show's working-class charm and its celebration of everyday Irish life. Now, beloved actors were connected to practices that seemed at odds with that ethos. Public response was swift and unforgiving. Social media buzzed with outrage, and tabloids splashed scathing headlines across their pages. Viewers struggled to reconcile the show's blue-collar, down-to-earth image with the reality of its stars sheltering money offshore. Questions swirled. How could a series built on ordinary struggles now be entwined in a web of financial sophistication and loopholes? Even the creator, Brendan O'Carroll, remained largely silent. As the face and driving force of the show,
remind me again, the knickers, the tongue, the skinny bits go to the front and the back.
Many expected a strong response or explanation. Instead, O'Carroll offered minimal comments, his quiet stance fueling speculation and uncertainty. Backstage, the revelation fractured morale. Some cast members felt betrayed by colleagues. Others worried about the long-term impact on the show's reputation. Conversations reportedly turned tense, and the once cohesive team began to feel divided. What had been a tight-knit production now carried the invisible weight of mistrust, as the carefully crafted public image of familial warmth clashed with a more complicated, behind-the-scenes reality. Adding to the strain, Martin Delaney and Fiona O'Carroll's marriage eventually ended in divorce, further separating 2 central figures of the show's cast. What had once been a literal family on and off the screen became fractured, reflecting the emotional as well as financial strains at play. While the tax revelations eventually faded from headlines,
No, I meant that the chap died. Is very sad.
their effect lingered. No charges were filed, and no legal penalties were imposed, but the perception of the show's family-friendly image was undeniably altered. For viewers, the Paradise Papers incident served as a reminder that appearances can be deceptive. The laughter, the chaos, and the warmth of Mrs. Brown's Boys masked a world where power, loyalty, and personal decisions intersected in messy ways. The scandal didn't stop the show's production or erase its popularity, but it introduced a layer of complexity that audiences couldn't ignore. a reminder that even the happiest households can cast shadows behind closed doors. What was the final straw that led to the major fallout? The F word, the fallout, and the changing face of Mrs. Brown's Boys. In television, perception is everything. For a show that built its reputation on humor, humility, and chaotic charm, any hint of controversy could shake its foundation. And in 2018, Mrs. Brown's Boys faced a storm that had little to do with bloopers or punchlines, a clash over language and creative control that revealed just how fiercely Brendan O'Carroll guarded his creation. The BBC, impressed by the show's consistent ratings, wanted to move it to an earlier 8 p.m. slot, a prime window for family viewing.
I can't believe that Peggy the Perno Poisoner is getting out on bail.
The only requirement? Tone down the swearing to meet pre-watershed rules. O'Carroll, however, refused. The show is the show, he reportedly told executives. Put it at 8 o'clock, 10 o'clock, or 12 o'clock. The people who want to see it will find it. I'm not changing it. His defiance was more than stubbornness. It was a statement. Mrs. Brown's Boys had never been about polish or propriety. Its chaos, its messiness, and yes, its colorful language were what made it feel real. For O'Carroll, compromising on that voice would have been a betrayal. Yet, the decision came with consequences. By rejecting the primetime slot, the show potentially limited its audience growth. Younger viewers, who might have discovered the series, remained out of reach. Behind the scenes, some cast members reportedly bristled at being excluded from the decision, knowing that a better time slot could mean bigger bonuses and more opportunities. This creative control also intersected with broader backstage issues. Live performances, a hallmark of the show, began to show cracks, mistakes that once delighted audiences, actors breaking character, cameras catching crew, ad-libs gone wrong, started to feel sloppy. Fans began questioning whether the bloopers were authentic or staged for effect. O'Carroll insisted that unpredictability was part of the show's DNA, but critics and longtime viewers noticed a subtle shift. The charm that once made Mrs. Brown's Boys felt spontaneous was fading. Meanwhile, the departure of key cast members compounded the challenge. Replacing familiar faces disrupted the chemistry that had made the show feel like a real family, both on and off screen. New actors stepped in, but the warmth and spontaneity began to feel forced. Christmas specials, once major television events, became shorter and fewer, and critical reviews grew harsher. Jokes felt recycled, plots predictable, and the energy less infectious. Fans, too, started to notice. Forums and comment sections filled with questions. Had the show lost its edge? Was O'Carroll unwilling to evolve, holding too tightly to a formula that no longer resonated? The laughter, once loud and genuine, now carried a hint of hollowness. Yet despite all this, the essence of Mrs. Brown's Boys, its chaotic energy, fourth-wall-breaking humor, and sense of inclusion, remained. Even if the original cast had fractured and the behind-the-scenes drama spilled into public view, audiences still tuned in for the madness. The series wasn't about perfection. It was about feeling part of the live, messy world O'Carroll had created. How did this hit sitcom manage to weather the storms that nearly sank it? Mrs. Brown's Boys still thrives. The question of why Mrs. Brown's Boys continues to thrive in spite of heavy criticism and recent challenges has puzzled many people. Back in 2013, Brendan O'Carroll admitted that he did not really know the reason himself. However, by the time the sitcom was crowned the best sitcom of the century in a Radio Times poll with 14,000 votes, he had come up with a possible explanation. He believed that modern comedy had ignored a particular group of viewers. According to him, television executives had treated comedy like the new rock and roll and focused only on young audiences between 18 and 25. In doing so, they had forgotten the traditional viewers, the kind who once loved shows like Are You Being Served? He argued that the award was proof that this forgotten audience had finally found their voice again. Former BBC director Rory Cowan also supported the idea by pointing out that the show had received one of the highest audience appreciation scores in years. He explained that its success came from connecting with people who no longer saw themselves in modern sitcoms. After the year 2000, the spotlight had shifted to quirky and unusual shows like The Office, The Thick of It, Spaced, and Peep Show. Even the few mainstream hits that made it through, such as Outnumbered or Miranda, were usually middle-class and London-based. In contrast, Mrs. Brown's Boys told the story of a working-class Irish family, something rarely shown on screen.
Nice day, we need lovely day.
Ah, thanks, Agnes.
No, really, it was lovely.
One of the episodes highlighted this difference in a playful way. Mrs. Brown bought a smart assistant shaped like a shamrock. At first, the device spoke in a posh English accent, but when she changed the setting, it switched to an Irish accent that was far more relaxed and down-to-earth. It was a small joke, but it reflected the show's ability to speak directly to ordinary people. Another reason behind the sitcom's appeal was its family-driven production. At one preview event, O'Carroll explained that nearly everyone in the cast had worked behind the scenes at some point, which meant they understood the effort needed to keep the show running. He believed this created a stronger sense of teamwork. The frequent use of swearing had also attracted debate. O'Carroll once described how a BBC executive told him he would never become a big star unless he toned it down. His response was that he had no desire to be a star, and that the show had to stay true to itself. Jennifer Gibney supported this view, remarking that in Ireland, words like
Oh, my mother did a degree from Galway University. She started her life as a nun.
feck, or even stronger terms, were part of normal speech, no different from a pause or punctuation. Polls also revealed interesting things about the audience. While fans came from different backgrounds, critics tended to be more middle class. A YouGov survey even showed that 62% of fans had voted for Brexit. Some commentators saw this as a sign of a cultural divide between working-class viewers and elites. Labour MP Stella Creasy suggested in a blog that the popularity of Mrs. Brown's Boys showed a growing gap between the public and those in power. Others, however, argued that many middle-class fans enjoyed the show as well, even if they were less willing to admit it openly. Scholars also offered another layer of explanation. John Fagan, a professor in Dublin, said the sitcom gave a rare voice to older women and their desires. He noted that traditional sitcoms often portrayed women as either glamorous fantasies or as undesirable spinsters. In his view, Mrs. Brown's Boys broke away from this pattern by allowing middle-aged women to express humor, boldness, and sexuality in a light-hearted way. Whatever the interpretation, the show's success has remained strong. O'Carroll himself reflected on his life by saying he once trained as a waiter from the age of 14, but every day since finding success with Mrs. Brown, he had been thankful for a second chance. Outro. The show's evolution posed questions. Could it recapture the magic of its early days? Would it survive the combined pressures of creative rigidity, cast turnover, and shifting audience tastes? Share your thoughts with us in the comment section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.